Last night at Quilting Bee at Karen Martin's house, she was serving drinks and gave us each a placemat for the table to keep her table safe and clean. And they were the placemats that I had made her a year ago for her birthday. In looking at them, Diane had commented on how straight my lines were for the quilting and how I had achieved that. And I said, oh, there's a technique I just made up and figured out how to do using the back of the placemat and fabric that had some sort of a design that I could follow. This would be easy enough, nice straight lines, and they came out pretty good. And she said, oh, I don't think I could do that. And I'm like, of course you can. I says, it's easy. All you have to do is, and I looked at the placemat and I thought, how did I do that? I really don't remember exactly. I knew there was some stitching involved and lining up, but to explain it to her, I couldn't remember. It had been a year. So thinking back, I remembered I had done a little lesson on how to do this, videotaped it, and just let it sit in my phone for a year. So I thought last night I should put that together, do a little intro, and have it so that at least I would remember how to do it and might possibly help someone else do some simple quilting that's a little different than the basic puzzle pieces, swirls, something like that. So I figured this would be an easy way to do it. Then I could remember, and I could show Diane and how to remember how to do it. So without further ado, here is straight line quilting from the back on some placemats. And stay tuned to the end. There's bonus fabric or bonus material, as they like to make sure you stay to the end. I could care less. If you want to stop in the middle, stop in the middle. If you don't want to like it, that's fine. If you don't want to share it, that's fine too. But I hope you enjoy it. Thank you. Good morning from the studio. I'm going to show today how to do a quick placemat with machine quilting that you don't have to mark. There's not one mark, but you get these beautiful lines, and it's all in what you purchase for your backing fabric. Ta-da! There are lines that I use to do the machine quilting. There's a couple of steps to make the process go quicker and easier and ensure that these are nice and straight. So stay with me and we will get going. Here's a placemat that's top's been done but not quilted yet. We have our batting, and then we have our backing, which is the lovely purchase plaid fabric. So I will show you how I make sure that everything is straight and aligned and get the process going. First, I flip the batting over, and then there's the batting, the backing, and the top. So I'm trying to align someplace that I can stitch along here so that it's straight, and then along the bottom here. So I'm going to pick a spot that I can go with my machine on this side and stitch using a black thread in the bobbin so that when I flip it over to align it, I can see it clearly. Here we have the batting with the clearly marked line of stitching in black, and then this is the backing. So now I will align the two pieces, or I should say the three pieces, the top and the sandwich that I've already started. I will align my top to the black stitching on the batting side. I've used my 505 temporary adhesive to do a light coating just to hold it down for a moment while I'm going to get ready. And then I flip it over, smooth everything out, and then I'm going to put, for good measure, some pins. Remember, we're pinning to the back because we're going to be stitching on this side. Some pins, and I use my quick clip so that I preserve my fingers, and then we'll get to machine quilting. Okay, so as you can see, everything has been pinned in place, smoothed out. The front looks like this. Not too bad. Could be better. I'm hoping it will quilt out. And then I will quilt from this side, straight stitching, using, I judiciously picked these areas here, and I kind of wanted to keep the plaid effect on the front, so I'm going to stitch in these red lines on either side of them. So I'm not touching the red line, hopefully. I'm only going to do a line on either side of that red line, so all of these going this way, all of these going that way. And I've placed my pins so that I think I can get through this line and my walking foot won't hit the pins, so I can keep them in place. So let's do a couple of lines and you can see how it looks. Here are my first 2 lines of stitching in the white on either side of that red line. And then this is what it looks like in the front. Stitching looks pretty good. Tension's good. Better to check when you do 2 lines than when you've done 20 lines. Easier to rip out these 2 if you don't like it. But that's what I'll do. Keep going until it's done. Here it is, all trimmed up. The one I just did. Fairly even quilting, centered on all sides. Fairly flat, so it's not too puffy. Not too many bubbles on the back. Everything seems to have settled down. Onto the binding, and then I'll show you another way to use lines for the back of a quilt that are a little different than this. Stay tuned. When you pin baste a quilt, make sure there's nothing on the surface that you have flipped your quilt onto. This is extra fabric that got stuck somewhere on the bottom. Thankfully, I found it before it was sewn on. So now I just take a couple of the pins off, take this fabric off, and continue machine quilting. Good Lord, it could have been a real disaster. When it comes to attaching a binding to any quilt, if it's something that is not going to be entered in a fancy pants show or something special, I do my down and dirty, start and finish my binding. My bindings are cut at 2 1/4 inches because generally my quilts are pretty flat, not thick at all. And especially this is a table runner and placemats. We don't want our margarita shifting for any reason, or your cup of coffee. So they're flat, they're quilted to death. Oops. And now they're going to be bound with a smallish binding, 2 1/4 inches. You see I folded this at the 45. I'm going to start by stitching with it open for a few inches, maybe 4, 5, 6 inches. And then I will flip it over and then continue sewing. So I'll start it, video the results, and then continue on. As you can see, I've started sewing while the binding is open, about 6 inches. Now I'm going to flip it back. Right at that point, I'm going to start stitching once again with the binding as you normally would. And then when we come around, we'll tuck the tails in, flip it over, and restitch it, and it'll be done. Okay, I've come to the end. Now what I'm going to do is I flip this over where we started. I'm going to cut a piece that's approximately like here, and then I'm going to flip it over and tuck it in and restitch. So give me a minute. Here's our folded 45 that this section has been tucked into here, and now I'll stitch all the pieces together. Hopefully it doesn't flip yet. And go to the end. Hard to do it one-handed. And I'm going to go to here, and then it'll be all set to flip and hand sew to the back. As you can see, I've started to flip over the binding, and then I'm going to hand stitch it. Now this is where we joined it. Well, we didn't. The collective we did not. I did this. And it gets a little bit thick in here. So what I've done is on the seam line of seam allowance, I've graded it down quite a bit. And then I've kind of tucked in anything that might be sticking out, and then I'll stitch it down. Now, it's not perfect because it's a little thick, but it'll settle down, and it's a lot easier than trying to match things up. Yes, you can do all that matching diagonal seam BS, but for a quick and easy placemat and table runner, this works just fine for me. And if your friends come over and they look at the back of your quilt, they're not your friend. Just saying. They don't deserve that margarita or a cup of coffee. Here it is, all done. The final piece of the set, the table runner, done in the same manner as the placemats. Quilted from the back using the plaid fabric in order to get those straight line quilting without any marking. I also have, as a bonus, another way to make your backing fabric more interesting. Using a plaid and adding text to the backing with using the lines on the fabric to both horizontally and vertically line up your text. The text was made from fusible appliqué using these letters purchased from a big box store. What's nice about these is that you can reverse them to trace without too much trouble and have your fusible come out correctly. I hope you enjoyed this series, and looking forward to maybe giving you some more insight in different ways to do quilting, machine quilting, or maybe even applique. One never knows. Have a great day, and thanks for sticking with me.